So without further ado, I would really like to open the floor now to Dr. Balaji Somasundaram. Now, Balaji, you are available right now with your camera, and I would like to use the opportunity to introduce you.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, and welcome to the series. Thank you for joining us. Now, Balaji, you've completed a PhD at the University of Canterbury in chemical process engineering. With over 14 years of experience in this biotech, specialized in fostering academic and industry as well as government collaboration to drive impactful translational research. Balaji currently leads the CMC unit at Denteric, an Australian biotech company, where he oversees early phase clinical programs, tech transfers, and process scale-ups. His focus is built on building partnerships and ensuring that the regulatory compliance has been pivotal in advancing all these biologics development. Balaji has indeed a proven track record of collaborating with CDMOs, CROs across Australia to enable a successful research translation. His career also includes a significant industry role at Pfizer, where he contributed to translating a biosimilar molecule to the market, effectively really bridging the gap between the research and commercialization. Additionally, he took on a scientific leadership role in a collaborative project with Patheon here in Brisbane and Cytiva, driving bioprocess innovation through industry partnerships. Early in his career, Balaji headed the strategy operations as a contract R&D organization within an academic environment, where he was able to establish numerous national and international partnerships. He played a key pivotal role fostering collaborations across academia, industry, government, driving the innovation, facilitating the research, translational research outcomes. And his current work continues to focus on enhancing the innovation through strong collaborative networks that strengthen the research, the development, and translation across the biotech sector. So Balaji, we're absolutely delighted to welcome you today. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy day.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you for the invitation to the International Society for Vaccines. It's an absolute pleasure to come and interact with the members of the society, and I'd like to also thank all the members who've taken time to connect through this webinar. Whichever part of the world you might be, it might be early morning or afternoon or late evening. So once again, thank you very much, and hopefully, I can drive the message that research translation involves effective partnerships. So without further ado, I'll share my screen to help communicate that message across.
Balaji, one thing, whilst you just get your presentation up, I forgot to ask for any of the attendees, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and I will monitor that and raise the questions. So thank you.
Okay, so Sandra, just checking if you can see my screen.
Yes, looks perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so the message that I really wanted to drive this afternoon in this webinar was basically to talk about, when academics and industry come together and work hand in hand, they basically accelerate innovation. That means turning ideas into impact and also, turning research into real work solutions. So the key word there is coming and working hand in hand, and hopefully that message will reflect in the presentation throughout. Okay, so the landscape for research partnerships to drive translational research is constantly evolving, right? And that evolution in the landscape needs more of industry and academic partnerships to drive the translation, and basically to bridge that gap between theoretical knowledge and practical applications. And through that partnership, we sort of expect it'll drive economic growth, and from that economic growth comes some technological advancements, and from technological advancement is where it subsequently leads to skill development or workforce development. And across any partnership, right, there are three key components to partnership, and it sort of reflects in across any walk of life, when you're partnering with anybody, it's always the people that come first. Whether you're in academics or industry, it is people coming together and working together for a common cause, or for a common objective or a common mission. And people come with diverse skill set and diverse background, and academics are usually have that that innovative thinking and ideas, and industry sort of brings that regulatory framework to drive that research translation. And when two parties come together, then obviously there's going to be differences in processes, and you got to bring those processes together as a part of that partnership. And there's obviously going to be different infrastructure that people could leverage and use to drive that partnership to translate the research outcomes that we want. So the three key components of any partnership is people, process, and infrastructure. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about innovation. And to me, I think there are a few examples that I want to cite here, where industry and academics have come together to drive meaningful innovation and contribution to the scientific society. So I've picked 3 examples, and basically everything is from Australia. Because I also want to take this opportunity to highlight the Australian biotech ecosystem and the wonderful work that's happening here in this ecosystem. So I picked the first one as a cervical cancer vaccine, which is a technology that basically came out from the University of Queensland, which was in partnership with CSL and with Merck. The product that came out of this partnership was Gardasil, and is one of the most widely used vaccines across cervical cancer and HPV-related disease across the world. And to me, cervical cancer vaccine that came out of University of Queensland basically put not just Brisbane, but also the University of Queensland on the world biotechnology map. And till date, the biotech program at the University of Queensland is very well recognized, not just within Australia, but worldwide. And to me, the cervical cancer breakthrough was the foundation for that biotech program to jump and get that head start to what it is today. Next is an example is Vaxxas. Our moderator this afternoon, Sandra, is from Vaxxas, and the next speaker, Wasan, is also from Vaxxas. And it's an amazing technology that again comes out from the University of Queensland, where you've got that needle-free vaccine delivery system, which basically sort of removes or hopes to remove and improve that distribution, vaccine distribution pipeline, and the platform technology that could be applied across wide range of vaccines. Again, very impactful research, and now that is getting translated into real world outcomes. So again, it is that academic mindset that usually triggers that innovation, which then, when joined hands with industry, you put into that regulatory framework and a structured framework to drive that translation. The next example that I picked is Denteric, the company that I work for. Is a technology that came out from University of Melbourne, which sort of has it as an immunotherapy that is aimed at neutralizing virulence factors or toxins in that's circulating in blood that is caused by a bacteria called P. gingivalis. And this technology came out of an academic lab, but there's about 20 years of research that's gone in. A lot of people across Melbourne have worked on this project, and it's only in the last few years where it's come into spun out as an industry, as a small biotech company, which then started to drive that innovation and that research from lab into early clinical phase at the moment. So that translational mindset comes when you bring that industry partner into picture to drive that acceleration of innovation into that impactful research outcomes that we want. So again, as I said at the start of this slide, is there's some amazing work happening here in Australia in the biotech sector, and these are only 3 examples of the work that's happening here. Okay, so as I've said, innovation leads to technology advancements, and here are some sort of stats to back that up. Across the biomedical innovation field, we see that there's about 60% of the newly approved drugs from FDA comes from an academic industry partnerships. Again, highlighting the significance of the innovation and the impact partners coming together. There's about startups and spin-off companies. There are about 300 plus startups in Australia alone coming out from academy and industry collaborations. When you look at UK, there's about 4 times more than Australia. Stanford alone has more than 100 plus, startups across not just biotech, but across a wide range of sectors like healthcare, renewable energy, and other technology. So the partnership and collaboration is just not restricted to biotechnology alone, but then it's widespread across different sectors, and it is important for that innovation and that translation to come together. So startups and spin-offs are a good yardstick to say that research is getting translated from bench to somewhere along that pathway to get to commercial environment or to market. And now there are some academic colleagues in the audience, and for that I put up this statistic here. It's not really a technology advancement, but rather an outcome of a technology advancement. When you've got that innovation or breakthrough and you start to publish, there's about 30 to 40% more citations for papers or research articles coming out from academy industry collaboration when compared to just purely academic research. Now that actually adds light to the significance of or the relevance of the practical applications that come from industry academy collaboration. So it is absolutely necessary, this partnership of academy and industry coming together, one feeding off each other. But then there are frameworks that needs to be put in place, and how to work together, how to work hand in hand, as I said in the start of the slide, is quite important, and I'll come to that in later in the presentation. Okay, so technology advancement means then you got to get your workforce up and running, and getting workforce development is one of the key points that from an industry perspective is very important. You may have the best infrastructure in the world. You could have a lot of money or funding to fuel a project, but it's really that people and the skill set that you want to bring in to drive the project that is the first requirement for any company or for any research project, right? So a recent study in Australia shows that there's about 1.3 million tech workers are required by 2030, and currently there's only 30% of that technology workers is covered by women, which I think talks to more work needing in diversity in hiring and training processes across Australia. But I guess there's a lot of work that's going on in that space. So to close that gap across academic, so the academy and industry partnership, one of the key focus should be workforce development, right? In the biotechnology sector, this is sort of reasonably well addressed. At least in Australia, you've got formal as well as informal mentorship programs going on. There's a lot of training courses and programs that is relevant for academics who want to move into an industry space. It's available here in Australia. There's training programs conducted by the Aus Biotech. There's training programs conducted by several forums within Australia. So it's a very well supported ecosystem that really concentrates on helping the next generation researchers come through from academic into that industry space to help drive the translational research. One of the key factors that will lay the foundation for helping academics to move into industry is to this switch in mindset of that 80-20 rule. You got to be fast and you got to be agile. When you're sitting in an academic environment, you would want to solve, but you want to have 100% of the answers to all the questions that you've written down. But sometimes, when you're in that translational mode, it's not necessary. You got to sort of have that decision-making capability to narrow down what is good to have and what is must to have. And must to haves is what you pick up and you go with as much speed as possible. So it's really high impact and high reward initiatives. That's the mindset switch that needs to happen from, when you're moving from academic to an industry environment. Are you able to move fast? Are you able to make informed decisions in a much quicker way that's going to impact the project in a positive direction? When people are moving from academics to industry, there's always this question of translation versus publication. And postdocs and PhD students who have worked in a research environment are constantly driven by publication, and they need to step out of that publication mode and be more focused on translational research. So this is a research translation that's going to bring through new technologies and new treatments, or even policies or business models that's mandatory or absolutely essential for driving innovation. So have a think in terms of publication versus translation. Okay. So now, going into what does meaningful engagement actually mean? So at the start of this webinar, I did mention that academics and industry will have to work hand in hand, and that hand in hand is the key, basically. And that involves a set of framework or structure that I usually follow. Is when you're working with a partner, you got to set your expectations, and you've got to align your objectives, right? That common goal and that common purpose, what brings you together, is a very important driving factor for that to strengthen that partnership. And then comes the project management aspect of any project. When you're sitting in meetings, and if you're going in circles without making any decisions, it sort of wastes people's time, not just academic but also industry. So time is very, very precious, right? So bringing that project management mindset of how can I get to the how can I drive the project along the pipeline in the resources that I have, which is the time and money. So which means I need to be making decisions that is going to impact the project in a positive manner. So you're sitting in meetings to make decisions, not because somebody likes to be in meetings. So that project management mindset is absolutely key. And if you're working with industry, having a dedicated project manager to manage a project, who are constantly liaising with your industry partner, will actually go a long way in that in getting that project to a successful outcome. The next point I want to drive is foster open and regular communication, right? So challenges happen in any project, and people would want to know of that. Is being transparent is quite important, but at the same time, you also don't just bring problems to the table, but you also bring the problem and a solution to that. Bring your perspective and bring your opinion and bring your ideology in terms of how that problem can be resolved. It may be right or wrong, but it's always open for the discussion. Be open and transparent and come up with solutions, which sort of indicates to industry that you have taken that effort to think through that problem and you've come up with solutions. And then you could have that good mentorship or coaching to guide through that scenario. The key, again, for an academic industry partnership is to engage in creating knowledge together. Sometimes the discussions or the interactions is mainly driven by funding. If you can partner with an industry, you could get funding from industry, which means you could leverage university money, or you could leverage government funding as well on top of that. But really, the core should be creating that knowledge together. As Simon Sinek says, that you buy a car to travel, not to fill fuel into it. Of course, filling fuel will help drive the car. So taking that analogy into academy industry partnership, your partnership is to drive to that common knowledge creation or the common goal where you want to go to. Funding will help, but the goal is not to get funding, right? So keep that in mind when you're partnering with industry. Then comes, once you've come to that common objective and you have, set to a milestone in terms of what is the knowledge that we're going to create together, then commit to a long-term relationship. It's not a short-term relationship with any industry. If you commit to a long-term relationship with any industry, and likewise for an industry with an academic partner as well, a long-term commitment, a long-term relationship goes, it's basically going to strengthen that partnership. So you're just not going to finish off with one project, and hopefully that partnership, leads to multiple successful outcomes, and you can start to pick and choose how you want to navigate that partnership forward. Right. One of the key points that usually holds up that academy and industry partnership is who holds the IP, right? And that's obviously the legal parties from both sides to come together in that discussion. But at the same time, you got to think in terms of the bigger picture. It's like, how are we going to get to the end? How is this IP sharing going to support or enable the project or the research translation? So there's no right or wrong answer here. Every project is different. Every situation is unique. So have a consideration in terms of how that IP is going to be shared really early at the project, and not once IP is created. And constantly evaluate and reflect your collaborative efforts. Is this the right partner that you're working with? Is the project going in the right directions? Are we, is the goal still common for both parties? Are we working together really well? Is this the right environment for this project to be driven? So that constant reflection of an evaluation of that partnership is quite important, which then goes back to committing to that long-term relationship, right? The constant reflection and improvisation and continuous improvement is what is going to help you sustain and endure in that long-term partnership with industries. So to summarize, the benefits of academy-industry partnership is that we're looking to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge and practical applications, and we're looking to drive economic growth basically through innovation, and thereafter innovation will drive technological advancements, and which then later leads into skilled workforce or workforce development. And the partnership, as I said at the start of the presentation, it really revolves around people, process, and infrastructure. You got to get the right people aligned, you got to get the right processes aligned, and you got to get the right infrastructure aligned. And if you actually have the right people aligned for the partnership, the process and the infrastructure will follow. So always think in terms of people, process, and infrastructure whenever you're looking at partnerships. With that, I want to say, thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
That was awesome. Well, thank you so much, Balaji. And that's really, really helpful, I guess. One of the questions that I had, because I don't see a question online right now. So you had mentioned that there are several programs in place to join and link to academia with the industry, especially like in Australia. What would be your recommendations for early career researchers, postdocs, where we might not have such projects or links together in programs that can interlink academia with industry?
Okay, so some of the programs that's top of in my mind, at least in the biotechnology sector, is that the Aus Biotech program has got some training courses and structured programs to help academics, especially early career researchers. And then there's also, if you're looking at moving into biomanufacturing spaces, there's structured and structured training programs across GMP courses, and there's also training programs on regulatory and quality aspects that's required for industry. On top of that, project management programs are available. And that project management program is just not tailored for industry, right? It could also be applicable for an academic project. So that project management to me is a translational skill that you could have at both academy and industry. So again, there are structured programs on project management. So specifically, the GMP programs are run by CBE, Pure Solutions, and then there's There's quality and regulatory programs that's run by Seed Pharma. There's project management programs, and I think that forms as a structured program through any management courses, I believe.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for that, Balaji. Now, what was the biggest challenge that you encountered, having finished in your academia, the PhD, and afterwards you worked? What was the biggest challenge you encountered when approaching industry and starting collaborations?
Look, I have actually been fortunate to have worked in a PhD program that was funded by industry. Because the industry wanted to actually drive a specific project, and thereafter I moved to University of Queensland, and that basically opened the door for me to work with quite wide range of researchers across academy, industry, and government sectors, right? But if I have to say that, if one piece of advice would be to, when you're going and engaging with an industry partner, is to talk about research outcomes or an industrial outcome rather than funding, or rather than financial partnerships. Think big picture and think relational, and for any partnership or any relationship, right, it's a trust that is quite important, and build your relationship with an industry on trust.
That's definitely true. Now, with your current work, does Denteric have any collaborations, links ongoing? Can people reach out to you for advice? And yeah, how does your current company that you work for with, how does that work? Are they looking for anything? Are they collaborating?
Well, look, we're obviously collaborating in terms of manufacturing, and it's on the research translational side. But if people want to reach out in terms of internships or mentorship, that is not formally available within the company because it's a small biotech sector. But stepping outside the Denteric framework, as an individual, I'm happy to talk to people to help them navigate if they want to move from academy to industry.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Balaji. I don't see any questions online, so if there's in the audience not a burning question, I might just take the time and say thank you so much for your time, Balaji. And I would like
Sandra.
to invite Wasan. So Wasan, if you can please turn on your camera. And thank you. Balaji, can you
Hi
just,
all.
you can, thank you. Hi. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Now, Wasan, I'll just give a quick introduction to you. So you'll be talking about like from the bench to the business development today. You're basically a business development professional with a passion of applied infectious disease research. So you grew up in Auckland, New Zealand, moved to Melbourne in 2012, worked as a research assistant before you completed a PhD at WeHi in Melbourne. Subsequently, Wahan worked as an intern at CSL in 2020 before spending 4 years with the WeHi business development team. Wasan just joined Vaxxas in January, as director for the business development. And other than work, Wasan enjoys reading and spending time outdoors. So without further ado, Wasan, please share your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am just trying to figure out. Okay, here we go. I think.
We see your presenter mode.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. There we go. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. So, just adjusting this so that I can see my slides. So this is going to be a bit of a whirlwind tour through my 10 years or so of my career. So I've got 15 minutes, so I'm going to start with the summary. And this is slightly. I'm going to get my pointer. So this is fairly standard career advice. Follow what excites you and interests you, and keep learning new skills. I'd also say don't be afraid of new challenges. They can be scary, but you can learn a lot. But just while I was doing my PhD and while I was a research assistant in academia, I really had no idea that these other roles existed. So I think it's really important to recognize that outside, some of these roles can be in academia. So for instance, WeHi in Melbourne has a business development team, we have a patent attorney, and we have a strategy and planning team. But a lot of these other functions are quite new to me, but I've come across them at CSL and also at Vaxxas. But as Balaji's mentioned, everybody in the sector is really, like, it's great working in biotech. Everyone's pretty friendly. It's pretty rare that you'd like to talk to somebody or go out for a coffee and you get knocked back. So I'd really encourage you to start making those connections. If you meet someone at a conference, or if you can just chat to somebody on LinkedIn, I think more often than not they'd be willing to spend 15 minutes on Zoom or Teams, or even meet for a coffee to just talk about what their work looks like and how they got there. So this is just in case I run out of time during the talk. So we'll just kind of start there. So this is my timeline for my career. So as Sandra's mentioned during her great introduction, I did my science degree and then my postgrad 1-year honors degree at the University of Auckland, which is where I grew up. And then I applied for some jobs. I got a great job as a research assistant at WeHi in Melbourne, and I'm half Thai, and this job actually involved me going to Thailand and doing some tech transfer for some stem cell culturing to Thailand, and working with the malaria team at Mahidol University over there. So that was really great, but this is quite a short talk, so I'm just going to blast through those first 2 points and then go on to my PhD. So my PhD was not on vaccines at all. It was focused mostly on the innate immune system, and specifically on host cell signaling responses to dengue virus infection. So dengue fever can present as a mild flu-like illness, but in some cases it can progress to a more severe form called severe dengue, which can involve shock and bleeding. And really importantly, at the time of defervescence, so when your fever kind of breaks, days 3 to 6 of the illness, this occurs after the virus has been cleared from the body. So this really shows that it's the host immune response and a cytokine storm and an overactive host immune response that's really driving this severe dengue disease. So my PhD, and this is just one brief snapshot of it, I set up an immunocompetent mouse model, and this is showing in red the IFNA mice, which have a genetic ablation of the type 1 interferon receptor. And then contrastingly in blue, mice are treated prior to infection with an IFNA blocking antibody. So these are immunocompetent C57 black 6 mice, and treated with the MA1 antibody. And as you can see in caption C, in graph C, the viral load is still very much detectable by qPCR at day 2 post-infection, but this clears rapidly, which mirrors human infection, and it's much lower than the IFNA mice, and the wild-type mice develop few of any symptoms despite the viremia, whereas the IFNA knockout mice succumbed. So a lot of my PhD involved going through different knockouts of innate signaling pathways that are available at WeHi. So a lot of looking at the cytokine signaling feedback loops, so SOX proteins, and then also the components of the NF-κB pathway. So what do I want you to take away from this? So basically, and this is a point that you probably will have heard in other talks as well, but I think it bears repeating or repeating from a slightly different angle. So from your PhD, you're going to have excellent lab skills. You're going to know how to, get your cell stocks out of liquid nitrogen safely. And you're going to know, like I learned about qPCR, Westons, a lot of other things for studying the innate immune response. But you're going to have these excellent other skills which are really transferable. So you're going to have excellent communication across a really wide range of media. You're going to be able to prioritize competing tasks very well. You're going to have a lot of resilience, and I really built that up during my PhD. And you're going to be really good at working in teams to get things done. So, don't underestimate yourself, don't undersell yourself. These are really great skills that you can take into other jobs, which thinking back on it, I really didn't appreciate that when I was in the middle of writing up and everything. So I was able to secure an intern role at CSL. This is the Australian Postgraduate Research Internship. So basically, I worked with this small but mighty research external innovation team at CSL. So this was during COVID. So I met my bosses in person, two great female bosses, Marta and Purdy, can't rate them highly enough. And I saw them for the interview, and then I went in to pick up a laptop, and then the other 6 months I was working from my flat in Melbourne, and doing international calls, which was interesting. So I had to do the interview, and emphasizing what Balaji mentioned before, that the majority of pharma pipeline projects are now brought in via external innovation teams. So I was part of that process for CSL. So essentially scouting for technologies that would be useful for CSL and could be commercialized and brought to patients via CSL. So very different to my PhD, but it was really exciting and I really loved it. So I learned about what pharma and biotech look for and also how they operate. So what does the process look like? So they have, CSL has a grant scheme. It's up to $400,000 US over 2 years. It's global. So anyone from the academic institutes around the world can register, and then academics from those institutes can apply to the RAI, as it's known. And then, so the CSL External Innovation team also has great networks, and they've got really good contacts with startup incubators. So for instance, WeHi, University of Melbourne, and CSL have recently collaborated to build a startup incubator, a physical biotech incubator, into 2 stories of CSL's new global headquarters, which is based in Melbourne. And the CSL team also has great personal networks with universities and industries. And through these, they source a lot of interesting projects. And then if these are validated and achieve proof of concept and tick some other boxes, which I'll go into shortly, then they can form part of CSL's R&D pipeline. So as an intern, I was applying my knowledge of cytokines and the innate immune response to look at the science that had been submitted by other groups to some of these, to the CSL Research Accelerator Initiative scheme, and to see, did I think it made sense? How was that? Was it logical? I had to look at the scientific team and assess the strength of the scientific team. And I worked closely with the immunology team at CSL, which was really interesting. It's a global team, so all around the world, and assessed how these projects aligned with CSL strategies. So a lot of the time when you're looking to do a collaboration with industry, it is important to check, and often they have this online, what are they looking for? And importantly to note, the strategy does change. So what you look at in March might be different in June. And CSL, they could see a project, great team, great science, if it wasn't on strategy, it would go straight in the bin. So it's really worth paying attention to that. They really, really care about their strategy, which is basically looking at what are the areas of greatest unmet need that they think they're best positioned to address. And then everything else, this is something else that was completely new to me from my PhD. So I had to use competition software to look at the competitive landscape, assessing what other assets were out there or technologies were out there that might be competing with what we were seeing at CSL, because you don't want to back somebody that's a long way behind in the race to market. And then looking at the intellectual property position and also the market analysis. So that was what I was doing in my 6 months at CSL during the pandemic. And then my boss at WeHi, who I ended up working for, she was working on infectious diseases, and half of WeHi pivoted to work on infectious diseases. So she needed some help. So I joined as an associate and eventually a senior associate. So the WeHi BD team, they don't hire people with only academic experience. They really value that industry experience. There's at different times 6 to 9 BD staff to look after more than 90 laboratories. But a lot of the laboratories are just focused on basic science and not so much on commercialization. The job was very different to CSL again, and I'd never looked at legal agreements before starting with WeHi. So essentially, this is sort of a mock scenario where an academic might meet another academic at a conference. They want to talk about sharing a mouse between the two labs. So then the WeHi BD team would need to be involved to set up a confidentiality agreement to make sure that any confidentiality agreement and any confidential information, or CI in shorthand, is kept confidential. And then that might develop to the point where one institute wants to send their mice, their special mice, to another institute. So then you might put in place a material transfer agreement. So this is limited scope. It's a one-way transfer of mice or other goods, and you can start to put in some guidance around who owns the IP. So any results that are created and any new IP that's created during the from use of the materials, you can start to address that. And then from that, you might have really exciting results from the transfer of mice. You might want to go on to a collaboration where you both support each other to work on this. And this collaboration could be an academic industry collaboration, or it could be an academic collaboration. Sometimes there's more than 2 parties involved, and it can get quite complicated. So in this scenario, you might want to work together to use the mice to develop an antibody. So who owns what in terms of the IP? There might be IP to do with the special mice. There might be IP to do with the antibodies. So it's important to sort of set an understanding for that at the start. And also you can start to determine who is the commercial lead. And at WeHi, generally, we're always interested in whether we wanted to out-license the intellectual property to a company such as CSL, or whether we might want to put the intellectual property into a small company and then spin that out. So WeHi would have a stake in the spin out, and the spin out would be free as a business to develop that intellectual property further. So I was going to try to these are the 4 sort of activities that the WeHi BD team would do, and that I would do as part of the WeHi BD team. And essentially, this builds on what Balaji was saying before. So identifying the IP, having a commercial plan, having a really well-managed collaboration, and also, I guess, something extra is managing the risk to WeHi. So if we're working with CSL, they're a really important partner for WeHi, and we don't want to do anything to damage that relationship. So how do we manage that? So there's a few things to sort of bear in mind, but really this can seem quite boring, all of the agreements. Oh my God, more paperwork, it's slowing me down. But it is really important to have these, to set a strong foundation for expectations, so that both parties know where each other stands, and that you can then progress really with a good relationship and with mutual trust. So I started off and I saw these as sort of legal agreements that were tick boxes, but then I by the end of it, after a few years, I saw them as really important tools that you can use to build a strong relationship. That could be with another academic party or with an industry party. So that was my time at WeHi. And then, as Sandra mentioned, I've recently started at Vaxxas, which is very exciting. So Vaxxas, I think you would have heard, is developing a needle-free future of vaccination. So I'm not going to talk about that much today, but essentially last year, for professional development at WeHi, I managed to secure a 3-month secondment to Vaxxas. And that was arranged through connections at a venture capital firm that WeHi works with and Vaxxas works with. And then I started, I took some of those learnings back to WeHi for a few months, and presented on those to the broader WeHi BD team. And then I was able to start at Vaxxas as a consultant in January 2025. So Vaxxas is quite different. Again, WeHi was all about developing technologies that we could license to other people from a commercial perspective, whereas Vaxxas, sometimes we're looking at licensing in either exciting new vaccine assets or assets to do with delivery of antigen. So I'm involved in that process with my scientific background and also my business development background. So this could involve finding opportunities, reviewing the science behind the opportunities, and talking to the potential partners to see what we have in common and how we can move forward. Grants, Vaxxas has been really fortunate through the years to have a really strong relationship with the University of Queensland, and I've been involved in some grant proposals together with different UQ teams, one of which we have the outcome and it was successful. So that's a $2 million US prize to work on mRNA vaccines. And I work on some simple financial modeling, which we can use to determine the relative value of different technologies that we look at in the business. So we can use that to inform our decision making. And I've worked with the Chief Medical Officer to develop a presentation on undervaccination, which is a huge problem around the world and which is contributing to problems like the measles epidemic that currently is sadly occurring in the States. So yeah, exciting times. This is the same slide as before. Just keep excited and just follow your what excites you, I think. And this is me starting at Vaxxas, just some cute photos. This is on the city, seeing the city cat come in on the river. This is North Stradbroke Island. This is some of the beautiful flora and fauna. And this is me being excited but nervous on my first day last year. So thanks for taking the time to join today, and happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thanks heaps, Wasan. That's really nice to see all of that coming together. And it's definitely interesting, different change on how you moved from your PhD area into the business development world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I don't see any questions online, so if anyone has
Sure.
questions online, go ahead. But I may have a quick question. So one of the things is a lot of the academics don't really have to review the MTAs, CDAs, etc. So what would be your number one advice for academics that have to review some of these legal documents that are not really well versed or don't have the background? So what is the lessons learned from that for you?
I think you can always work with your BD team at the university or your technology transfer office, and they should have people that have that background. Yeah, you want to work with them rather than trying to do it all yourself.
So, and thank you for that. And what is the biggest change or challenge for you when you had to really switch off that probably academic research thinking and put on the BD hat? What was the biggest change and difference there for you, or challenge?
So I guess I'd be talking to our legal team, and I'd give them this 5-minute talk on all the science. And as my boss would tell me sometimes, their eyes would glaze over and they would, I think it would just be too much. They generally had at least a Bachelor of Science degree, but some of them did not. So she just said, you know, you have to learn how to communicate at a very high level, only what they need to know, only what's essential for them to do their job. And if they want to know more about it, they can always ask you. So having to be, you know, you could still be excited about the projects, but having to be discerning with, yeah, your communication.
So is that then also the biggest skill that you would say, like for academics, whether they want to stay in academia or move to an industry or like a different job area, is that what you would say that would be the biggest skill, to be able to break down complex science into a very simple, digestible content?
I think that's really important, but I think you do just have to tailor it to audience. There might be times when you do want to be able to convey complex scientific concepts and to really bore down into the more complex science, depending on what you're trying to get across or who you're trying to communicate to. So it just depends, yeah. But being able to switch between the different modes of communication and the different levels is a really good skill. Yeah.
If you're currently in this position, would you ever consider going back into the academia?
I think I would. I just found you know, this great opportunity, and I've really taken the chance to learn a lot, but it was never really my plan to go down this route. I always sort of saw myself as working on the bench. So absolutely, I'd be keen to give that a go again. What I like about the current job is that you get to work across lots of different projects, and you get to see sort of at a high level where the organization is trying to go to. So I do like that side of things, but sometimes you miss generating your own results. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm mindful of the time as well. So I would really like to thank this opportunity for you presenting, Wasan, and also to Balaji. Thank you so much for your time to present to the audience and provide an insight and input into a different field that is not the standard way of how people advance from their academic career. So it's been very, very interesting. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And everyone.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you to all the audience who've joined online.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And thank you to the audience. Really appreciate your time, and you enjoy your day. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks
Bye.
all.